Wow. Quite an introduction. I gotta tell my wife what you said, and maybe I'll get lucky.
Well, Bill, there's a lot of talks these days about Nepo babies, but you grew up in a family that was, your dad was a great, well-known musician. Your mom, obviously, was a very successful actor, between Perry Mason and all her great work in the film noir and a lot of different genres. Did you feel that that was something that pushed you towards the performing arts, or were you reluctant to sort of follow in the footsteps of your parents?
No, actually, when I was younger, I just thought they went to work. But the great thing for me was that I got to go to, I got to get out of school. And that was just fabulous. I get to go and get up before dawn and go have a cup of coffee and a donut at 10 years old, and climb around on the old Mitchell cameras, and those were huge cameras in the old days, and it was a lot of fun. I wanted to be a part of that. I suppose it infused itself into my being. I wanted to be a part of that family because the people were all so fabulous.
And you got to be on a lot of sets growing up because you occasionally were doing stuff with your parents, and then you sort of pursued your own career. What was it like being, as a child actor, having that experience of sort of being on set, but not having really any training yet, but sort of wanting to, be, like you said, seeing the Mitchell cameras. This is the heyday of, classic Hollywood, late 60s, early 70s. Just such great movies and television being made at the time. What was that experience for you like, and did it fan the passion that you had for your career going forward?
I don't know. It just was fun, as I said, to get out of school. And early on, I did some. You were talking about a Nepo baby, and I did some Perry Masons as a kid. I'd do a day here or a day there, and I'd get to go to the school on the set. I did a Rawhide when I was 12 years old. I had a great scene that I did with Clint Eastwood, and I think I did a Wagon Train, and I did a few other things. But it really wasn't until I left high school and I started working at South Coast Repertory down in Orange County. And I fell in love with the theater, really, which I've continued to love, and I've tried to do a play every year. Aside from working in film and television.
One of the great visual stylists of our age is Brian De Palma. Talk about a person who just knows how to use a camera. And there's certain people that they say are shooters, and certain people are actors, directors. I'm curious because obviously Brian was just brilliant. What was he like as a director, as an actor? Did you find you got the same attention that his DP was getting? How was that experience of doing Carrie?
Very briefly, Brian worked with all of his actors for a number of weeks before we started shooting. And once we finished that, impromptu sessions, I worked with Amy Irving and a little bit with Sissy and some of the other cast members. Once we finished with that and we got to the set, Brian was really all about his camera. It was all about the composition and the look of the set and the lighting. And he felt that he had already done most of his work with the actors. And yeah, he asked us for certain things, acting. He talked about tempo. Let's try and shorten that response. But pretty much he left it up to us to do the work and continue the work that we had done in rehearsals.
And of course, casting was going on at the same time. It's a very well-known story that contemporaneously, Brian and George Lucas were casting Star Wars and Carrie at the same time, and there was some crossover between the casting of those two movies. And you famously auditioned for Star Wars as well with Kurt Russell.
Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about that because, Mark Hamill did a very, very good job, but I think I single-handedly could have turned that franchise around had I been cast. I do. So feel free to write letters to George and let him know your feelings about.
Well, Luke didn't really have a handbook either, by the way. So Luke didn't have a handbook either. So I think that there's a lot of atrocity.
And it's not too late for Bill to play a Jedi, so,
Yeah.
you know, George should know.
In the future, everybody will play a Jedi for 15 minutes.
Let's that audition has been making the rounds, and you're terrific in it, as is Kurt as Han Solo. Let's just, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, let's take a look.
I ended up deciding to get drafted. Figured I'd go to the course.
He's wrong. Where are we shooting from?
We are shooting,
Yeah, I can move this forward. I don't understand. Is this
well,
camera
this is really
rolling?
for Kurt anyway, so I'll
Okay.
go through
Scene
it.
4, take 1.
Shooting from everywhere.
Okay.
Making you nervous. Okay, action.
No, it checks out again. There's no mistake. You can't find Organa Major?
I found it. It's just not there.
Organa Major's been destroyed.
What's left of it is contaminated. That's it there. God, look at those radiation readouts. It's impossible. I've never seen anything like it.
The Empire must have gotten here first.
The planet has been completely blown away. This would have taken 1,000 ships with more firepower than I've ever seen. Well, if the enemy had some kind of new weapon that could do this, I'd have heard about it. I'd know something.
Well, now you know. Look, the enemy's on the move. We don't have much time.
Yeah, well, look, I brought you here. So now what?
Well, we have to find the rebels. What we're carrying belongs to them.
Well, their bases are very well hidden. And all the power of the Empire can't find them. Do you know where they are?
No, not anymore.
Well, I'm not going to take you on any impossible search across the galaxy. Look, I was only paid to get you here, and you're here, so I'll just take my other 5,000, and I'll be on my way, and you're on your own. I'll lead you on the nearest system.
Oh, no, you can't. We've come this far. We have to find them.
Why?
Well, for one reason, we don't have your other 5,000.
Who's going to pay me then?
I think there's some things we need to talk about.
No, I'm beginning not to like you. How much do you think she's talking about anyway?
Oh, $1 million at least. At least. If this robot has any information relating to the destruction of Organa Major, I'm sure you'll be able to name your price.
Anything I want. That's interesting.
Well, look, maybe you should just drop us off. I'm sure we can find someone willing to take the risk.
You got a ship. Where do we go from here? It probably took her to find the hidden bases. I don't see how we can possibly find the rebels before she breaks. And the Empire has already beaten us here.
Yeah, well, she's part of the royal family. They won't get anything out of her. She knows the power of mind control. But she is the only link between us and the hidden bases.
Well, you think we should go after her?
I didn't say that, but it does appear to be a logical alternative.
Wait a minute. She's an Alderaan. No, it's impossible. Nobody goes anywhere near the Alderaan system. Hey, I'm a freebooter, kid. I'm not a revolutionary. You board the wrong ship.
Oh, wait a second. Maybe the fact that no one would go there voluntarily could help us. I mean, they probably don't expect anyone to ever dare try to, right?
Well, don't you believe it?
Look, fear is our greatest offense. I doubt that the actual security there is any greater than on a Quali or Sullust. And what there is probably directed toward a large-scale assault.
This isn't a game, you know.
How many more systems have to get blown away before you have no more places to hide and are forced to fight? Don't you realize what's going on out there?
Well, that was a lot less whiny than Mark Hamill's performance.
I think that would have worked if you hadn't been paired with the Jungle Boy from Gilligan's Island.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I have some notes I'd like to give to Kurt Russell. I feel bad for his career.
Whatever happened to him anyway?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I gotta say-
he just kind of disappeared out there.
You know, Harrison Ford has that, and Carrie Fisher had that famous line about George, you can write this stuff, but it doesn't mean you can say this shit, right?
Right.
And I think you did such a great job with some, and this was before, you know, sort of a lot of it was rewritten, and sold the hell out of it. So I'd like to see that.
I think it's
version of
reboot
Star Wars.
time.
That's right. Reboot time. That's right.
I was just trying to remember all the lines.
Yeah.
You know?
That's indeed the problem with technobabble, isn't it? Yeah. It's like there's nothing you can relate it to in your real life, so it's harder to remember. Yeah. So then you go on and work with John Milius, another one of the film brats, which was what Lucas and De Palma and Spielberg and
Yeah, they were all in the same tribe. They all hung out together. Are part of that USC tribe.
Yeah.
and it's considered probably the greatest surfing movie of all time. I mean, I know you all love Point Break, but Big Wednesday is the granddaddy of great surfing movies. What was that experience like?
Well, it was great. You know, I got to work with Dan Merkel and George Greeno and Bud Brown and Greg McGillivray, all very iconic in the world of surfing. And, you know, the late, great Jan Michael Vincent, and of course Gary Busey, who's always fun to work with. Yeah, no, it was a great time in my life, you know.
And in the early 1980s, you get cast in an ABC show that I think means a lot to a lot of us. Greatest American Hero, you know, now it's all Marvel versus DC, but for us, you know, growing up, the definitive superhero was, you know, Ralph Hinkley, Ralph Hansen, depending on when you watched it. Can you tell us a little bit about going in for that role and what you remember about the series coming to you?
Well, remarkably enough, I didn't have to audition for it. Steve Cannell, I was doing a play in New York, the last season of the Phoenix Rep, and I was doing a play with Diana Wiest, who we know from Edward Scissorhands and so many other things. She's iconic. And so we joined the cast from the Guthrie Theater that they brought to New York. And during that, I got the script for Greatest American Hero. And I wasn't inclined to do it because I was quite content being in New York and doing theater. My agent said, well, Steve would like to fly out and see you and talk to you. So Steve flew out on a Sunday and took me to dinner after the performance, and he was so gracious and just such a lovely man to spend time with. And I did indeed like the script. It was laugh out loud funny when I read it. So he charmed his way into my life, and God bless him, and I agreed to do it. So I finished the following Sunday, and got on a plane, and my hair was brown at the time because I was playing a French Canadian in Bonjour la Bonjour. I flew back to Los Angeles. I dyed my hair back to my natural color, blonde, and it's funny because all this time he wouldn't talk about the suit. Wouldn't talk about it. I said, oh, you'll love it. It's going to be so much fun. So, you know, because I thought at the time, I'm going, oh my God, I start wearing that suit, that's the end of my career, you know? I mean, at the time I did that, and probably Adam West would have said the same thing. You know, you do something like that at that time, and it would end your career, pretty much. It was not like today when you have people like Ed Norton, Robert Downey Jr., and Scarlett Johansson. You have all these wonderful actors. Right. They all want to be in that tentpole franchise.
It's all been brought to the big table now.
Oh gosh, yes. And it's not held against you. Then you can go on and do your indie films and your more actable films, right? Where you don't have that kind of dialogue, and you're not working on a giant green screen stage, working to X's on a screen and pretending there's monsters, you know? But at the time, it was a difficult decision for me. I'm so glad I did it. It was a lot of fun. And when I finally saw the outfit, I was mortified. Just mortified. And I really played it for all it was worth. I mean, that's really me hating the suit in the show. Because the actor, William Katt, hated the suit.
That comes across.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But did it have an impact on you? Like, what that you can point to? Like, did you go to auditions or just not get auditions that
I
you
did
thought?
not get the auditions after the show.
Wow.
No, I did not. The only great thing that it brought me, I had auditioned for Pippin many times for the producer Stu Ostro and Bob Fosse. I think I had auditioned 4 or 5 times. I auditioned when John Rubinstein was going to play it. I auditioned when Michael Rupert took over to play it. And in fact, they were going to replace Michael, and they flew me in to replace him. And then Michael, he upped his and went on for another year. Finally, I did the first season of Hero, and because I had gotten some sort of gravitas from the show, the public seemed to like me. So I walked into my final audition in Los Angeles, And Mr. Foss, who was there, and Stu Ostow was there, and I said, do I really have to audition again and sing for you again? And Mr. Fosse said, nah, you got the job, kid.
Oh, nice.
And that's that story. And that was lovely. That amongst just a few others really stands out in my career. Many years later, I got to work with a few other people that I liked in the theater world. Randy Newman being right up there. But that's what that gave me. But most parts, I couldn't get good television roles. You know, about serious dramas I couldn't get. But it all came out in the wash many years later. I'm here with you guys. I get to do these wonderful cons and meet all the lovely fans that are out there, and I do so enjoy that.
Isn't that the weird thing? I mean, that's the trade-off, isn't it? It's like you're doing theater in New York, which is, you know, giving you a great deal of satisfaction. You do a show which you really enjoy that speaks to people, and yet people can't see, even though you've done all this theater and all these great roles, they can't see past, at least at that time, past the suits, you know, the spandex. And, you know, of course, you know, Stephen Cannell was a legend, you know, going all the way back to Rockford Files, but he had a million different shows on, and he could be very persuasive.
Yeah, I think other than Aaron Spelling, he was the most successful independent producer in television at the time. 43 shows?
Yeah,
43 shows. Unbelievable. And then he went on after a few after Greatest American Hero, he decided he wasn't going to do television anymore. And then he had 10 bestsellers.
Mm-hmm. Right, he was a mystery writer.
A mystery writer, yeah.
Yeah, we had him on Castle for a couple
you did.
episodes.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
What did, and you know, somebody who doesn't get enough love, I think, is Frank Lupo, who was like his right-hand man, who was really the guy who, after Stephen came up with the idea, would sort of have to run these shows.
Mm-hmm.
And any memories of working with Frank?
Not specifically. Just I remember him as a very nice guy, and I got to know Frank much better after we were down on the show. 10 years went by, and then I got to know Mr. Lupo pretty well.
I wonder what it was like working with Bill Culp, because of course Bill Culp was a prickly personality, but such a
That's a good word.
such a memorable actor. And you know, going back to I Spy, you know, he was
Bill
writing
his character
and
name.
directing.
It was Bob Culp.
What?
Robert Cope.
Robert
Yeah.
Culp. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, what
Bill
am I
was
doing?
his character.
Yeah, I'm getting older. So, but you know, with Robert Culp, I mean, going all the way back to I Spy, he would write, he would direct, he had very strong opinions.
Yeah.
What was your relationship like with Bob Culp?
Well, he didn't like me, and I didn't like him when we first met. That's you know, that's really what happened. I think it was that it was the Greatest American Hero, and I had first title. I had first billing on that. And he, you know, coming off I Spy and some of the other wonderful things, Bob Carroll, Ted and Alice, and he thought that he should have first title. And I said, but Bob, it's the Greatest American Hero. It's not the Greatest American Hero and Friends.
And after all, he'd already murdered twice on Columbo.
Oh, had he?
So, yeah.
Oh my God. Anyway, we ended up being very good friends after a few weeks, you know. Knocked on his door, we arrived at a wonderful professional détente and stayed very good friends, professional friends, I should say, all through the show, and then right up to his passing.
You have such amazing chemistry on that show.
Yeah.
And, you know, even going back, you know, there's some shows that hold up and others that don't, but, you know, I look at episodes like Operation Spoil Sport and some of the real classics that, you know, just hold up remarkably well. I know one of the more controversial things, of course, was when David Hinkley shot Reagan, they quickly changed your last name to Hansen. Was that?
Hanley.
Henley.
Henley, all right. Was
Yeah.
that something that was Much Ado About Nothing? Did that strike you as strange, or do you remember that?
Well,
whole
it was
period?
very short-lived because, you know, Michael Pare, a week later, raised his hand in the classroom and called out, "Hey, Mr. H."
Right.
And the producers loved that.
Yeah.
And so
Well, that solves our problem.
it
Yeah.
solved the problem. From then on, he became Mr. H.
And it's such a nice ensemble on that show.
Yeah, Michael Pare did such a wonderful job. Connie Selica, just a love. She was lovely. What people don't know is she was only hired to do the first episode, the pilot. And, because Steve told me this. They watched in the dailies after the first 4 or 5 days. And the network loved her, and Steve Cannell loved her, and Juanita Bartlett, who was also one of the, and Alex Beaton, some of the producers on the show, they all loved her, and they called her agent and made an overall series deal with her. But she was only going to be on for 1 episode. And thank God, because the chemistry was like lightning in a bottle.
The dynamic was amazing.
Yeah. And it was like that in real life, too. We'd get together and sit down, and it was just the same chemistry.
Oh, that's good.
It's like, it's the old expression of acting your way onto a show. You hired as a guest star, and then all of a sudden you're so good and there's so much chemistry that you're there for the run of the show.
Yeah, it does happen. It does happen.
Were you surprised at the point, obviously the show reinvented itself a few times, particularly towards the end when the ratings were sort of going down?
Well, the ratings were down because they kept moving us around. Right?
Yeah.
They kept moving us
That's
from
right.
Wednesday to Monday, then back to Friday, and they put us on finally against Dallas, which was the #1 show on TV, and we knew we were finished.
Right. Yeah. Not a good idea.
And that's what happened. But I think the reason being for that was that Robert Culp, wonderful writer, him and I and Steve too, we all wanted it to be more, we didn't want it to be a weekly show about chasing a monster through the sewers or down an alley. We wanted it to have more of a social platform, and take on those issues, in a fun way, of course. And I think that's what happened at the network, is that they got tired of dealing with us, And Steve had so many other shows on the air, he didn't want to fight it.
Well, was that push and pull between, you had this great story, so you were a teacher, so you were a mentor to these kids, and there were some great stories that remind just out of you when you never put on the suit, but then the network wanted to see you fly, which is probably the last thing you wanted, to be on wires.
Right. They would have had me on the weekends, flying off to open Zodies, in my uniform. The whole thing with the on the TV guide, there's a picture of Ralph Hinkley flying, which I still see now and again. And they called me and they said, we want to put you on the cover of TV Guide. And I said, I don't want to be on the cover of TV Guide in my uniform. They said, okay. So then they had an illustrator paint the picture, and they put it up. And I was not happy about that. But hey, looking back at it now, I understand why they did that.
How many of those do you autograph now?
Quite a bit. Quite a bit. No, I don't know.
If you could tell yourself back then, send a message through time.
I would say, what an idiot.
Yeah, okay.
What a frickin' idiot I was, But it all worked out. It all worked out. I made some great friends.
Yeah, but it's hard in the crucible of all that. You're #1 on the call sheet. You're working these crazy hours. You're doing all this visual effects. So you're working Saturdays. You're not spending any time at home. It's a brutal schedule. So it's hard to, in the midst of it, realize how good you had it. It's only later on that you could look back and say, "Wow, wasn't that wonderful?"
Well, yeah. A lot of these shows, you got to realize when you're #1 on the call sheet, and it was not an ensemble show. It was not an ensemble show. I never had a day off. And Connie and Bob would get days off. But when they would go away, I'd be on a green screen set for the day, right? And I was up at 5 o'clock every morning, and I'd work till 12, 1 o'clock. 10 o'clock most nights, and Friday nights we'd go shoot till 12, 1 o'clock. And that's how it was every day. I never saw my wife, never saw my kids, So that part of it was tough. There's a lot of shows now, if you look at television, there's a lot of ensemble shows. They'll have 10 or 12 leads, and they're going from one storyline to another storyline. But our show, we didn't do that.
Well, and also they have much longer shooting schedules.
Yeah.
I mean, you were probably doing that, 7 days?
7 days, yeah.
Which is, crazy given how ambitious a lot of those episodes were.
Yeah.
So after Greatest American Hero goes away, there was talk of a revival. I know they shot a pilot.
They tried one a few years ago with the gal, I forget her name, lovely young gal, East Indian gal who was on a comedy, and with my friend George Wendt, who was also in it. And he said it was very cute, very nice, but the network didn't pick it up.
And so you weren't in the Bob Culp as sort of a role as a mentor?
No, I was not that.
see, I can't imagine Greatest American Hero without you in some capacity being the, I mean, you know, all the...
He is the handbook.
He is the handbook, exactly. And then you also did a movie, you know, for House, which we talked about in Miami, Sean Cunningham, which is a beloved, you know, sort of horror cult classic. Has humor. It's really powerful, you know, dealing with the PTSD as well. Tell us a little bit about your experience with that film.
Well, you know, my stock and trade as an actor, what I seem to, when I look at my overall, when I look back at a career that I've had, what I seem to always lean toward is playing a real guy in an absurd situation. You look at Carrie, I'm in an absurd situation. It's kind of crazy. And then all the shows, I'm the man in the middle. You know, trying to balance both ends, and the same thing with Hero. And then when I did House, it's very much like Greatest American Hero without the suit, you know? It was a lot of fun. Richard Mall and wonderful director Steve Miner that had worked with Sean Cunningham, our producer, many times beforehand. A lot of fun. Script was great. I love doing it. One of my favorite things.
And it's interesting that so many of the things you've been involved with have become so iconic. I mean, even going back to Carrie, as beloved as that book is, it's the movie that really, the words "to carry someone" entered the lexicon, the whole idea of what happened to Sissy in that movie and being bullied.
I read that book, the Stephen King book, and I did not like it. But of course, I was hungry to work. I wanted a job, and when I got the job, I said, great. But the script that we shot, it was much different and turned out to be so wonderful.
Yeah. And it's really, I mean, you know, we're looking at what, it's 50 years now.
Yeah.
The enduring appeal of that film. I mean, there have been so many adaptations of King since, but Carrie sort of remains one of the pinnacles of his adaptation.
Yeah, they've made so many remakes of that. And I've heard in the grapevine that the director Mike Flanagan, who's done so many wonderful horror films, he's preparing to do a 8 or a 10-part thing for Amazon Prime or Netflix of Carrie. So he is going to do it. I think he's doing something now, but I think that's, I only know this because I know somebody who handles him. My agent here, Dominic Mancini, handles him as well.
Do you remember what it was about the book that you just didn't like? And was that fixed somewhat by the script?
I honestly don't remember what I didn't like, because it's been so long ago now. I just remember I didn't care for it, but I loved the film script that was adapted from it, and what Brian did with it was just amazing.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting. Flanagan is such a great person to do it because he's someone who loves the genre, who reveres the film. You know, he'll do right by it. There's been, you know, so many. Kimberly Pierce did the sequel. Brian Fuller did a remake. I mean, so many different versions. But it'd be interesting to see what he does with it. I think for Amazon, because they own the old MGM library.
But he also is not afraid of changing things up to make them work better. He was great on that for Dr. Sleep, the sequel to The Shining.
Yeah, so. No, absolutely. Well, I'm sure you have a lot of questions for Bill, so if you want to line up by this mic, we'd love to hear what you want to ask. Go to the mic. You can stand up.
You don't have to
Don't be afraid.
Just stand and ask.
Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Like this gentleman.
This guy's going to bring the mic to you.
That's the wrong uniform, sir.
This one has a handbook.
That's right.
Just if you could elaborate, well, first of all, I'll do a shameless plug for you. People don't realize that Pippin, there was a taping of it in Toronto with all of you. It's a gorgeous taping. Highly recommend it. It's on Amazon every once in a while. If you haven't seen it, pick it up. But if you could elaborate more on your experience with Pippin, not the dog that gets eaten in Jaws or the dog that gets spits out in Meg, your Pippin, and maybe give us more of the insights of how much fun that cast was with Ben Vereen and all those people. So.
Well, very quickly, as I mentioned before, I auditioned for Pippin many times. It was one of the first Broadway plays that I saw when John Rubinstein was doing it, and I was just blown away. And Ben Vereen, who won a Tony for that role, was just marvelous. I had so much fun doing it. I was an actor who could move, but I was not a dancer, and very quickly, Ben Vereen, when we were rehearsing in New York, we rehearsed in New York, we all flew up to Toronto and we shot it up there. But when we were rehearsing, Ben came in on 2 consecutive Sundays to teach me the right track, which is a dance number, the only dance number really that Pippin does with the leading player. And he was just marvelous. And working with Chita Rivera, who was so iconic, oh my God. Everybody, and there was, I think half of the cast was from the original, you know, that were up on stage, the chorus, the dancers. And they were all just marvelous to work with. I had so much fun. I remember one instance in particular that I was backstage before opening night, and we only did 5 or 6 performances, but they were filmed by, Bob Fosse had flown up there and taught these guys that shot hockey games. Well, we had 9 cameras, and he went through and taught this crew how to shoot the stage production. But I remember before we opened, I was sitting backstage right at the curtain, and I'm going over it, over the opening number that I had to do, Corner of the Sky. And I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and it's Bob Fosse, and he says, "You got it, kid, don't worry about it," you know? And that's a wonderful memory for me. You know, you can't work with anyone better than a Bob Fosse.
Hello, I'm trying to see where, okay. My name is Gene from Chicago, and
Hey,
also
Gene.
on Comic Book Men. And when you were just briefly talking about the greatest American hero, I think I can speak for everyone in this room, and probably even more, that the theme song is the shit. And I was kind of hoping, believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I'd feel so free, flying away on a wing and a prayer. Ooh, can it be? Believe it or not, it's just me.
That's
Mark, I thought you were leaving the stage.
I was like, am I really that bad? I'm so sorry.
I always wondered what was more famous, the show or the song.
What came first?
I think it's a toss-up. There you go. Yeah.
Hey, Ken from North Carolina. Mine was a little bit of a piggyback on that. Was the theme song for the cast, did they think it was a hit? What did you guys think when you first heard it?
Steve played it. Mr. Cannell played it for me. One of the first few days, we were shooting in a warehouse in the San Fernando Valley, and he had the old little small cassette player, and he played me the song. He said, "What do you think? What do you think? It's pretty good, isn't it?" And I go, "Yeah, I guess it's okay," you know. And one of the things you got to remember is, you know, they were using rock and roll, pop songs
Sure.
during the show. You know, Elton John song, Rocket Man.
Yeah, I remember that.
And David Bowie, and it was marvelous. It's a shame they weren't able to use those songs on the DVDs when it came out later, because they didn't have the licensing for that. But
That's the biggest shame on these shows that are later released on DVD. They don't have the full rights to everything.
The shows are
That's
kind of
right.
destroyed by it. It's really sad.
Because now it's, you know, you make deals for any medium ever invented now or in the future in any dimension. It literally is that.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not-
literally
what
what
they
it
say.
You know, but back then it was just for the TV. So you see these episodes where the music is just ripped out of it, like Eve of Destruction. And
God
Operation
across the
Spoilsport.
universe, by the way.
But you still have Joey Scarberry. Whatever happened to good Joey after this?
I don't know.
Talking about one-hit wonders.
I don't think he had another hit.
Yeah.
And just know, all the music you hear out there on Spotify, those musicians, they get nothing. Yeah. I mean, they're just Spotify, and they robbed all those musicians out there. It's a shame.
He's going to get .0001 cent for what we just played.
Yeah.
Melody from Columbus. I'm
Yeah.
curious if you have any projects in the works right now.
I do. I just did a film with Alfred Molina and Mindy Sterling, who we know from a lot of the Mike Myers films. Sure. Nut, a former groundling. We had so much fun. I love working and doing improv with actors that can do it. And it was called When We Get There, and it should be coming out. It's a really good indie I've been in so many really bad films over the last 20 years. But this one, actually, I watched, and it was actually a pretty good film. Really touching film. And Alfred's
we
wonderful
find
in
it?
it. And also next week, this is pretty exciting. I've never done an audiobook. And I was tapped by Blackstone Publishing and Monstrous Books to narrate the graphic novel Coal Shack, The Night Stalker.
Oh, cool.
I don't know, came out in 1972.
Yeah, Darren McGavin.
Darren McGavin, who was so wonderful, and I'm going to be doing that. I don't know when it'll be released, but I start that next week.
That's way cool.
Fantastic.
Very
Very
cool.
prickly too, Darren McGavin. But the Night Stalker, talk about another show that's ripe for reinvention. That's so cool. We'll all have to check that out. You're doing the Night Stalker. That's awesome.
Go ahead.
I'm Nate from Cincinnati.
Hey.
So, if there was one power that you got to choose on Greatest American Hero that was not already featured on the show, what would it be?
Oh, flying, without a doubt.
That was not featured on the show.
Oh, that was not featured on the show. Oh. What'd you say?
Landing.
Landing. Yeah, that's it. Bravo. You're up.
Go ahead.
It's all on you. No pressure.
Christy from Mansfield. Just to follow up on the song, I have a friend and I make a point when we see each other to mention some word to get the song stuck in the other person's head for the rest of the day. How much do you like or dislike the song now?
It comes in waves. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't.
What is your favorite question to answer from people?
What's my favorite question?
Yeah.
Oh, I think yours just was. How about that?
Hello.
Hello.
My name's Storm, and I'm from Chicago.
Hey, Storm.
So, just got a funny story. My wife comes to me and she goes, they're making a series of one of our favorite movies. And I'm like, really? She goes, yeah, it's coming on tonight. And I'm like, awesome. So we sit down and we turn on the TV and it says, House. And we're like, wait.
Oh my God.
Is this a doctor show? I thought it was after our favorite series of your movie. So it was just kind of funny because we were like, I don't see the house he's going to. I don't
You
understand.
did do an episode of House, didn't you?
I did do an episode, yeah. House versus God, I think was the episode name.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Thank
Could have seen Bill Katt in House, just a different house.
You just had to be more patient.
Yeah,
Be more patient next time, sir.
Well, I want to thank everybody, especially Bill Katt, for joining us. This was such a delight, and it's so great to be able to, celebrate his amazing career. So thank you, Bill, for being here.
Thank you all. God bless.
Now, Ashley, if you will.
Don't go anywhere. Instead, we want you to rise and approach the stage to take a selfie with Mr. Katt.
Which is the tradition at
It's
GalaxyCon.
very much a tradition. The fire
So
department
you
is
wanna take a picture?
closing and barring the door, so you can't leave.